to our first ever First Gen celebration. In conjunction with CFWB, we are honoring all of our first generation college graduates and those who are pursuing their degrees here at Glenville State University. My name is Jeremy Carter. I'm the His Promise Scholars Coordinator for Glenville State. I'm going to be introducing your panelists here, and they're going to introduce themselves to you and tell you a little bit about them. So first, to my left is Mr. Garret Hacker, lecturer of music.
Yeah, I'm Garret Hacker. I teach a lot of percussion classes in the fine arts building. I do a few other things, notation stuff. Mostly percussion. Good to be here.
Are you a Glenville graduate?
Yeah, I graduated from here as well. So.
And also, you're from Braxton County.
I'm from Braxton County.
Very close. And then we have Dr. Amanda Chapman, Assistant Professor of English.
Associate
Professor. I always get those two.
It's okay. Yeah, I'm originally from Alabama. I did my undergraduate at Troy University and then a master's at the University of Alabama and then a PhD at the University of Pittsburgh. So I slowly made my way north and then came back south a little bit.
Then we have Dr. Lloyd Bone, also Associate Professor of Music. Take it away.
Hello. I teach music, band, and let's see, I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Went to Tennessee Tech University for my undergraduate, and then the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music for my master's and doctorate, and then made it here. Been here for a while now.
We have Professor Maureen Gildein, Lecturer of Physical Education.
Hi, I'm really happy to be here with you, and I wish some of you would move up, though. Not possible, right? But you can't.
How about we move up? Can we move up for the panel so we can all
Just move up a little
talk
bit.
quietly? Thank you, Professor Gildein.
So, I appreciate you moving up. I can't talk very loud today, so I appreciate you doing that. So, I'm from Allen Bridge, West Virginia. It's near Pickle Street. Yeah, sounds like West Virginia, right? That's what it sounds like in our communities. So it's about 15 miles from here in Lewis County. And I went to Lewis County High School, and then I came to Glenville to do my undergrad. And I graduated here, and there were no teaching jobs in the entire state of West Virginia at that time in my field. So I moved to North Carolina, and I got my master's and my ed leadership master's at the University of North Carolina in Greensboro. And I will finish my doctorate at Marshall next semester. So, really happy to be here with you.
All right, round of applause for our panelists. So I did want to ask if anyone was having difficulty hearing at all. Anybody having difficulty hearing anyone? I do have a microphone if we need to use it, and that way everybody will be able to hear. Okay, so I'll go with my first question, and we'll just go straight down the line. As a first-generation student, what made you decide that you would be able to attend college and be successful?
I'd say for me, I think I knew a pretty good degree of what I wanted to do, no pun intended. But I had a good idea of what I just wanted to do. I know I wanted to play music. I always enjoyed it ever since I was really young, even before I started band in school or anything like that. So I think I just knew I liked something so much that I would just do anything to achieve that. So for me, I just had that drive. Without that, I think it would have been a lot harder. So yeah, I just had that drive the whole time.
All right.
So I had some good reasons to think that I wouldn't be great at college, which is that both of my parents went to half a semester of college and then decided nope, and went into the military instead. But I had, when I was reaching the end of my high school years, I had always been a good student. This is going to sound like I'm tooting my own horn, but I'm just trying to be honest with you. I'd always been a good student. I knew college was going to be different, but it was kind of mysterious to me in what ways it was going to be different from high school. But I had been able to take AP courses as a high school student, and I'd been told that they were like college level classes, and because I had done pretty well in those, I thought, okay, it's worth giving college a shot. Though my only B ever was in AP chemistry, and I'm still angry about that.
It's great. It would have been my teachers and my parents, the reason why I went to college. I was in band in high school, and I started on a couple different instruments, but landed on the euphonium and practiced hard, worked hard, and got pretty good at it. Made the all-state band in Tennessee a couple times, and I had teachers encourage me like, "Hey, you should pursue this in college." And I wasn't too concerned about the playing end of it, but I was the academic. My academics in high school were okay, but I was never in the most fond moods to get to math class. And I loved English classes, things like that, science, but some of them not so much. And it was my parents. That would be the next part. They're like, you could do this. You're going to have to work real hard. You're going to probably have some trouble, but they were very honest with me. But we think if you really apply yourself, you can do it. And so I can't thank my teachers and my parents enough.
I have a little different story. My father never encouraged me to go to college. In fact, it was the opposite. My mother died when I was 3, and she wanted me to go to college. I don't remember her, but my grandparents raised me and told me that. And so I felt like maybe that's what I should do, or at least look into it. And so there were always books in the house. My grandfather taught in a one-room schoolhouse, and he had attended one semester at Marshall, and I wanted to be just like him. I wanted to be a teacher. So that's why I decided to go to college.
Excellent. I know Professor Gildein, as doing the job that I've been doing for the last 8 years, it is more often than not that there is very little familial support, especially in West Virginia, for first-generation students. So, next question, though. Please describe your experience of the undergraduate application process and/or any other major barriers that being a first-generation student presented to you in your freshman year. And we'll start with Professor Gildein this time.
So another story, which isn't so fun, when I decided that I wanted to go to college, and I wanted to come to Glenville because my history teacher, Dave Bush, really talked about Glenville and said nothing but good things about it, and the icing on the cake was that the hamburgers in the cafeteria were delicious.
Oh, true.
So that's what I was thinking about as a senior. So I thought, well, that's probably the place for me. I wanted to apply here, and I never even set foot on campus. Didn't take a tour or anything of that nature. I didn't have a car. There wasn't a lot of, time for my dad to bring me and that kind of thing. So I went to the counselor's office at Lewis County High School and asked for an application to come to Glenville and to apply at Glenville. And she told me that I probably wasn't college material. So I was crushed, and I went to the bathroom and cried, and then I got mad, and I went back to the office. I worked in the office first period for the principal and the secretary, and I went in there and I told Mr. Ravello what had happened, and he got mad. And so he took me to the counselor's office and got my application, and I was accepted at Glenville. So, yeah.
In terms of the undergraduate application progress, it was kind of two stories. My parents were wonderful, and when I was in the audition process for schools, for music departments, they were great in taking me there and helping me audition and get some of the initial paperwork done. When I chose Tennessee Tech, it was they helped me get moved in, and that was pretty much it. We had band camp coming up, and they're like, "Well, good luck," and away they went. And so some of the paperwork and things those first couple weeks were really daunting to me. I can't remember a lot, but I can remember a little bit of that. And then the second part of the question, what barriers were your first generation student in your freshman year? Mine was the opposite. I had a car, and it was a problem for me. It was a 1968 GTO. I had worked really, really hard, starting from 14 to buy this. And if you don't believe in miracles, I'm a perfect example, because this car was extremely fast and powerful, and I was in trouble with it all the time. and it was a barrier for me. And my dad was wise enough to take it away from me for a while. Towards the second half of my freshman year, he could see it being problematic, and so I can't thank him enough for that, for taking that car from me for a little bit.
That sounds like the basis of like a rock song.
Yes.
So the application process itself was a barrier for me, specifically the application fees. So I only applied to 2 colleges, Troy State University and the University of Alabama, because the application fee for each of those was about equivalent to what my family spent on groceries for a week for a family of 4. My parents lived paycheck to paycheck. I just could not fathom asking them for more money to pay more application fees for more colleges. So I applied to 2. Once I started college as a first generation student, one of the biggest barriers was just that there were a lot of things I didn't know that I should know. Like I just didn't know that I should be asking questions about things. For instance, like I didn't know that I should be reading the college catalog to find out that there's an appeals process if a grade is unjustified. I just never dreamed that such a thing would exist. So when a professor gave me a D on a paper because he said it was so good I must have plagiarized it, but he couldn't prove it and give me an F, I had no idea that I could appeal that grade. I was crushed. I worked so hard on that paper, and I had to live with that D because I just didn't know that there was a place that you could go and say, I don't think this is right. Just didn't know.
Common story. Professor Hacker?
I think for me, I started college year 2015. I feel like everything's probably mostly online now. That said, it's still a lot of stuff though. So it's like, what do I need to fill out? You know, where is everything? So back in 2015, you'd get like a PDF, and there was no way to submit it online. You still had to print it out even 7 years ago. So I was still pen and paper some things. But yeah, there's just so much things. It's sometimes you don't know what you need. You show up, and then it's one of those things where, oh, you don't have this. It's, oh, where do I get this thing? Where do I get this thing? But the more you do it, and the more you kind of look ahead, kind of like what Dr. Chapman was saying, if you look ahead at some of these things, you feel better prepared for it. It seems less daunting. It's usually a lot of the same information on these things too. Just a lot of different forms. So, word of mouth, talk to friends, talk to others. But yeah, it wasn't too bad. But a lot of stuff though. It was just awesome. And I only applied for a year, so I didn't have to do a whole lot of application fees per se. So I was also lucky in that regard. But it just kind of depends.
And I think Glenville's application fee has been the same $20 ever since I've been working here. But when you came to school, I don't know if there even was an application fee.
I don't recall. Mr. Ronello probably paid for it. Yeah.
So what would you say to the faculty who are not first generation? How can we level the playing field for our first generation students that are on campus today? Start with.
Okay. I think because it is a lot different. I feel like we haven't had that model in our lives before, so it's hard to know what's expected of us. It's hard to know those expectations. That's why maybe somewhere else there is a lot of students where they aren't first generation, and it just may seem like they have higher standards or something like that. But I think they've had those models in place. So I think just knowing that a lot of us, this is our first time even doing this, or we're learning as we go, and probably doing as much as we can. So I would just keep that in mind, that this is probably some of us giving us our 120% and then some every single day, and still feeling like you're fighting for it or something. So I would just say keep that in mind. We're all going through stuff.
I think one big thing that faculty can do is explain all the processes and resources that first generation students might not know exist, might not know to even ask about. We should err on over explaining everything, basically. For instance, when a first generation student sees on their schedule for their first ever semester of college classes that a class is designated TR, they might very reasonably think that means it's a Thursday only class. I know I did. So as faculty members, when we go over schedules with students, if we just say out loud Tuesday, Thursday, instead of saying TR, that might be enough to save a first generation college student from missing their first ever day of a class and feeling embarrassed and discouraged in that crucial first week.
I had a couple of thoughts. There's a lot, and this is great hearing all this. The first one came to my mind is listen and believe. Listen and believe. I've heard too many faculty over the years just talk about how, well, some students just don't know if you trust them or not. I err on the side of trust. My experience has been more often than not, the students are being truthful with you. And so listening to first generation students and hearing the challenges that they have, because they're just astronomical. And then believing them. And then next, understanding, trying to understand where they're coming from. You all are our customers, and I spent a lot, I said that the car a minute ago. I started cleaning tables and washing dishes at the age of 14 because I was bound and determined to have the GTO. I had seen one summer and fell in love with them, and my mom made the mistake of telling me, you'll never own one of those death traps, to quote her, and I just had to prove her wrong. So I have a lot of time in customer service. I'd start waiting tables when I was 16 at Ryan's Family Steakhouse, and I think if faculty understood that you all are our customer more, and we need to listen to you and try to meet the needs of our customers, we would understand everybody, including first generation students, better.
So two things came to mind. One was, I know I worked 2 jobs when I was going to college. And I don't think as faculty we realize the financial obligations that you have all the time. We don't think about that all the time. And realize that you're not just a student. You also have to work. And not just work one job, maybe 2. And commute. I know I commuted back to Weston for my job every weekend, and even when there was snow on the ground, I didn't get a pass because I wouldn't get paid, so that was tough. So that, and I know that I don't think I would have made it sometimes if I hadn't had Coach Lilly and Mrs. Piercy. They were faculty members here, and they took me under their wing, and so that happened because I just went in their office and sat down and talked. Faculty want to form connections with you, so go and talk to them and ask questions. Pick their brain. We want to help, but these 2 professors, they just anything I wanted, they were happy to help me. And Mrs. Piercy actually let me babysit her children. I'm not sure why she trusted me as a college freshman, but I never babysat before. So, but she did, and they saw something that I didn't know at that time.
Great, those are all amazing answers. I think it's really helpful for students, more faculty, and that's when we're recording this. While you're sitting there, start thinking of questions that you want to ask these panelists. We will have a Q&A after I go through the list of recorded questions here. But I think it's so important that people see this on video and they understand that, your instructors have office hours for a reason. They want to see you. Do not be scared of them. They're not there to be feared. How did you choose your undergraduate institution, and did their available services meet your expectations? So we'll go again in reverse, start with Professor Gildein.
So I think I already mentioned that my history professor, my history teacher in high school, Mr. Bush, had went here and talked about Glenville, and so he kind of influenced me to come to this college. Available services, I didn't have any money to come here, and my dad didn't have any money to send me here, so I really relied on financial aid, and they were great about meeting with me, and I needed I needed a job on campus as well as my other jobs, so I worked in the library and I worked in the PE building. And so I really appreciated the work study program and the financial aid program. So those were two that just stood out to me.
I chose Tennessee Tech after visiting several schools, and it was a lot of my parents to take me some different places because they both had tight schedules. My mom waited tables. My dad was a truck driver, and they got me to a few places. And a couple things sold me on Tennessee Tech. When I met with Mr. Morris, the tubular professor there, he was the only person I met that didn't have to say anything negative about the competition. Tennessee Tech's tuba euphonium studio, it's one of the finest on the planet. His hard work and their hard work just stood for itself. And I just loved that. I picked up on that, how he said nothing negative about it. He asked me where I went. In fact, he had nothing but positive things to say. Everywhere else I went, had tried to be negative about the other places I was visiting, and that really stuck in my mind. So I landed at Tennessee Tech. In terms of services, we share financial aid. They were super helpful. I worked at Ryan's Family Steakhouse back home in Chattanooga, and at school, I'd get a job working the salad bar at Shoney's. And so I was working during school, and financial aid was hugely helpful for me in helping me get loans. And I still tell students to this day, they told me this, and they're like, what businesses does your family support back home in Chattanooga? It's just like I went down the list, like, go talk to your car insurance agent, go talk to your church. I'm like, what? And so I did. Car insurance agent gave me like a little $50 scholarship or something. It was hardly nothing, but that's a book. My church gave me a little something, and then I got a scholarship from the Kiwanis Club. Little bitty thing, but it wasn't much, and all I had to do was once a year go up there and give them a little report of how things were going. And financial aid helped me piece together some extra money, and that was huge. And so that was the service that really helped me immensely.
So like I said, I applied to 2 schools, Troy and Bama. Bama was my first choice, and I got in. They even accepted me into their honors program. They were going to give me a full tuition scholarship, but I was going to still have to pay room and board. And my parents are very debt averse, so student loans were not an option for me. So Troy offered me full tuition and room and board scholarship. So that's where I went. They also helped me get a little alumni funded scholarship that covered the cost of my books. So my choice was entirely determined by financial matters. Bama would have been the better place for me academically in a lot of ways, but Troy was there for me financially.
I think that I knew where I wanted to go since I was like 14. I knew I just wanted to go here because of Hidden Promise. I was in the Hidden Promise program. I knew the honor band went on here. That's an opportunity for high schoolers and middle schoolers to kind of come and experience. But Hidden Promise brought us here for percussion ensemble. So me being a percussionist, wow, that's like paradise. And I came in and I thought, oh, I'm just gonna hear a bunch of drums and things. And it was not that. It was just extravagant. It was awesome. So I think ever since I was 14, I knew I wanted to come here. But there's a little bit more to it than that. It's also, I knew at Glenville that I knew the sky would be the limit for me. I just knew I would have the freedom to kind of pursue what I wanted to. There wasn't too much of, you have to learn this, you have to learn this. Now, of course, there are like some things you just gotta know. But I knew that if I went here, I'd have that freedom to just kind of be myself or pursue what I wanted to. So that was another big part of it. So I was kind of lucky being 14, just knowing where I wanted to go. And it was just, only 15 miles away because I grew up in Braxton. But like I said, the biggest part was just knowing I had the freedom to kind of do what I wanted. And everybody else mentioned financially too. I also got good financial aid years.
sure I used to tell people when I would visit schools that there are only 36 black belt financial aid counselors in the entire nation. 6 of those are in the state of West Virginia. 3 of those 6 are here at Glenville State. So they have a literal belt system, just like martial arts. If they go to trainings and they earn different belts and get up to a black belt as the highest. So I thought that was an interesting stat. So yeah, we really do have fine folks in financial aid. Were you taught about self-reliance and advocacy in your home environment, and/or did you employ those concepts as a means to aid in your success? We'll start with Dr. Chapman this time and go to your left.
So my family taught me about self-reliance and advocacy without ever telling me that they were teaching me that. So for instance, my parents never helped me with homework or school projects, ever. Their understanding was that those things were there for me to learn from, and if they had helped, they would be interfering in my learning. So I had to be self-reliant as a student. In terms of advocacy, when I started high school and wanted to take AP classes, I was at a tiny little rural high school that did not offer those, and my dad said, well, figure it out. So I went to the principal and I said, what do I have to do to get these classes here? And he said, you need a petition, you need this many students to sign saying they want those classes. And I went around and talked as many students as I could into it. I got the numbers, and then he said, no, just kidding, we don't have the money for that. And so my dad said, okay, so find out who's next in the chain of command, go over his head. So I talked to my school guidance counselor, and she said, go to the county school board. I had an IEP, so I was able to use that to convince the county school board after going to every meeting the spring and summer of my sophomore year with my dad, convinced them to let me go to the bigger high school in town in the county seat and be able to take those AP classes. So, my dad taught me to advocate for myself without ever using the word advocacy, and that certainly has served me well.
Wow.
Cool. That's awesome. I said earlier, my mom was waiting tables. My dad was a truck driver. My dad got laid off for a little bit. My mom fell into some health problems for a little bit in there. So they actually did talk to me a lot about both. That hey, you don't come from a lot of money here. I have 3 younger sisters, and they were not great kids like I was, No, they're wonderful, and they just pounded this in me that you're going to have to work hard and you're going to have to fend for yourself, and if you want it, we can't pay your way through school, and so I practiced a lot, and so I could get a good scholarship, and I got a pretty good scholarship, but there was still a good bit to pay. Tennessee Tech is it's a wonderful school. It's an engineering school primarily. They're well known for that in the engineering world, and those schools tend to be a little bit on the more expensive side, and so I had to have work on self-reliance, especially. Let's see. So I was just pounded that by my parents. It's like if you don't do this, it ain't gonna happen for you.
For you.
I don't know where to start. So I guess I had a lot of strong women in my family. My great aunts and my mom's sisters kind of rallied around me, and like there wasn't a day that I didn't hear, you can do anything that you want to do. If you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a teacher, you can do whatever you set your mind to. But like Dr. Chapman, nobody helped me with my homework. I did all that, and if I wanted to try out for cheerleader or whatever, or I think I did majorette too, there wasn't the classes. You didn't learn you didn't learn those skills so that you would, you'd make the team. I just did that. I just had that. It was intrinsic, and you just knew that nobody was gonna pay for that. There wasn't any money to pay for that, to do that. I remember going to my dad and asking him to sign the papers for me to get financial aid, and he didn't want to. And in fact, at first he refused to do it. So I had to have a compelling argument because I had a job at a place like Walmart, and I had a lot of hours, and I had a boyfriend who had proposed to me, and he didn't understand why I was going to college because my life was made right there, you know. So I had to really stand up for myself and make that happen.
I think it was kind of similar for me. It was something I had to learn the hard way. Like, I think I could see that from my parents, but it was never explicitly said to me. Like, you have to do these things or else. A good example of that is I was, it's going to be playing on the website, but I was on probation in high school for truancy. I just didn't go to school because I thought, I don't like it. I'm not going to go. I love music, so I was always doing something productive. I was doing music. But I just wouldn't go to school because I didn't like it. And, you know, my mom would be like, how are you going to go to college if you're not even going to class? And I said, well, I'll do it then. It'll matter to me then. It'll matter to me. I think this was pre-truancy, or pre-probation. But yeah, I was on probation for a year. I had to go to the courthouse, do these things, all this stuff. And, you know, by the time I got to college, I knew, well, if you miss class 4 or 5 times, you FIW. I never FIW'd anything. It just worked out. I just knew I had to do this. I had to do this. And like I said, I learned the hard way. I was probation, not going to school. And here I am teaching here now, 8 years later. So, like I said, it was something I had just kind of had to learn, self-taught, learn the hard way. You kind of decide, do I want to do that again? You know, you think repercussions, consequences of things. If you don't, that said, it opens up a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of pros you get out of it. You're just more responsible, you feel like you accomplish more, that makes you happier as a person. It's nice to be happy as a person. It's nice to feel accomplished about things. So, like I said, now that I do that more and have been doing that more, you just feel better about yourself. So.
It's interesting, and the truancy lesson, like you said about the FIW, that was free. You didn't have to pay for that. You do it in college, you have $1,000 of potential student loans that paid for that mistake for you. So, so this last one I'm going to actually split into 2 parts. But the first one is, what can Glenville State or higher ed in general do to help first-generation students be successful at a higher rate? And is there a service that exists here that we need more of? And I'll start with Dr. Bone and go to
Understanding the students, they have real challenges, and that it takes time to grapple with and overcome those challenges. It was a while ago now, but I was in a meeting with some folks, and it was yelled at me across the table that, well, we've got to see results now. And I was just like, well, that's not going to work with a lot of our students, because it takes time to get through some of those issues. And I've said before that, and sometimes over the years, we've enjoyed going to Charleston and other places and touting how we have per capita one of the largest first-generation populations, but we fail to get in the trenches and actually deal with those issues, and to help y'all deal with those issues. So I just think so much of it's understanding, trying to really understand where first-generation students are coming from, and then taking time, being patient to work through those challenges. In terms of services that we exist, I'm going to, when the Academic Success Center got moved to the top of the library, that was one of the best things this campus had done, because it brought further attention to the Academic Success Center. It brought further attention to those services. When I first got to Glenville, we had some similar approaches. Daniel Reed and some others, Robin Meadows was involved with some of that, had some similar approaches going, and we had gotten away from it. And so I think we actually need more of these services, not less. We need more staff. And financial aid. We need, just in several other places. We need more physical physical plant sees what's happening in y'all's lives. They show up in the dorms to fix things. They're moving in and out of classrooms. This may not be a popular thing to say, but we need less at the top and more in the trenches. We need some more faculty. Because faculty play a vital role in there as well. And I know it's easier said than done, but there are some models out there. There are a few models that's trying to rethink the direction that higher ed has been going as of recent. So more ASC, more financial aid, more retention people, more staff across campus, more faculty. So I was in administration a little bit as chair. Yeah, it's easy to say, but go work hard and find a way to make it happen. So it's my 2 cents worth. That's why I teach music.
Great. Professor Gildein?
So I have to agree with everything Dr. Bone said. We absolutely do need more faculty, and you know it. If you've ever taken my class, you know it's packed. At least 24 students in every class, and I have around 60 advisees. And I want to get to know my advisees better, but sometimes I can't because there's so many, and that makes me sad. So I think if we had more faculty, I think that would help. And maybe when our first gen students come on campus that first semester, really try to connect more and let you know about what's offered here, all the resources that we've talked about that helped us. We didn't have those programs, and it would have been really helpful. One other thing that I think is important that our faculty know is that, and our staff, that all your families aren't supportive of you being here. I felt very guilty for coming to college sometimes, and my family would just wonder if I was going to stay home after the fall semester, after the spring semester, and in fact they would try to get me to do that, and it makes you feel guilty, like they feel like, why are you leaving us, and the brothers and the sisters, why are you leaving us? Why don't you stay here? Again, you have a boyfriend, he's proposed, why don't you stay? You can have a good life, that kind of thing. And I know some of you get that too, but hang in there, because eventually they get real proud of you. They get real proud of you. They're real proud of you now, they just don't know how to communicate that sometimes.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think a lot of what Dr. Bone was saying is believing in you all. I think that's a big thing. You all are the future. We wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the students. Why else do colleges and universities, work the way they do? So I think believing you guys, just being empathetic towards one another. We're just all in different boats. Some of us may have not come from a family. Some may have come from a quote-unquote normal family. So you just don't know that. And we hire more staff. I agree with that too, because we're known as a university to be smaller classes, more personable with students. Having that time to talk afterward in a class or something. Other universities or a big place where you get those 120 student classrooms, I mean, that professor just doesn't have the time to get to know everybody. It's just not feasible. You can't really do that. So we could avoid large classes and allows more time for our professors, us too, to communicate with you all and just feel that better connection. Because that's when you learn the most. I think you're in a setting where you like it, everything makes sense, it's all moving smooth. There's no what do they talk about? I can't even hear them. They're 100 yards away from me. It's us from here to here. You could see that, and it just makes things easier. Believe in yourself, believe in each other, be empathetic. More faculty.
I'm actually going to return to something we've already talked about a little. We offer one of the most important services for first-gen students, for any students, but specifically for first-gen students, and that's faculty office hours. The problem is that a lot of times first-gen students don't know what office hours are for, or worry that they're going to be an annoyance if they show up for them. Right, so you start college, you see office hours listed on a syllabus, your professor on the first day of class mentions maybe where their office is, but that doesn't mean that a student knows how to navigate office hours. We all need to explain faculty office hours a lot better. We need to make sure that first-gen students understand that going to office hours doesn't have to be just about help on a specific assignment. Just going to get to know your professors better is a really good idea. These are the people who are going to be writing letters of recommendation for scholarships, for grad school, or giving you a recommendation for your first job out of college, your first big job. And the more time you spend in those office hours, the better your relationship with that faculty member is, the better that they can advocate for you in the future. Something I think we could use more of as well is attention to the physical environment of the campus. We talked a little bit about the need for more workers in maintenance. The literature about making first-generation students successful talks a lot about a sense of belonging, how important that is for first-generation students. That's not built in for them already in the way that legacy students have that. Part of that sense of belonging has to do with connections with faculty, and it's true that our students do on the whole report that they get that sense of connection with their faculty and staff members on campus, but a sense of belonging too, and again the academic literature bears this out, has to do with feeling comfortable in the physical environment. And hey, how many of y'all have been in a classroom that was sweltering? How about a classroom that was freezing cold? Yeah, it's really hard to feel like you're wanted in a space that seems to physically be trying to repel you. So we need to do better at taking care of classrooms, but not just classrooms, right? Like the dorms too. And I know that our residence hall people are fighting really hard for you guys, but when the money's not there to get things fixed quickly, right? Like you don't feel like a priority. So yeah, better attention to the physical environment.
Excellent. A lot of great ideas. So what advice would you offer current and especially future first-gen students, and we'll starting with you?
I think the biggest one is make friends. If you don't have friends to talk to complain about stuff to be happy with, then it's just hard to feel compelled to go to anything. It kind of goes back to where do you belong here, because if you don't have those kinds of connections. So for me, that was a big thing that I had already here at Glenville before I started, because I had a lot of older friends, and when I got here, I got to their friend groups pretty easily. When I went to grad school, I didn't have really any friends. I didn't know anybody whenever I went up there. I went up by myself, single, so I went up by myself, and I didn't really make friends while I was up there. My second semester was during COVID, so a lot of that was quarantine. Ours was more of a bigger lockdown. I had like a few people that I could call a friend, but definitely not like I was here. So I didn't have anybody I could complain to. I didn't have anybody to talk to about any of those things. It was just, hey, cat, which my cat, he's a great sport. He could listen well, but he couldn't sympathize with me. He wasn't in those classes. Yeah, I think make friends. That's the biggest thing. Be good for each other. Lift each other up, as they would say. Actually study together. I know that sounds cheesy, but it works. You just talk about those things. Make jokes about those things. Just something to have fun.
So nobody will be surprised by this. My biggest piece of advice is to go to office hours, like all the time. For no reason in particular, except just to talk. Like, ask your professors their stories. Ask them about their experience in school. Ask them, did their life turn out the way they thought it was going to? Right? Just anything that'll give you that connection with these people whose job it is to get to know you and help you in ways that have a lot more to do with you as a holistic person than just that particular class and whatever assignment you might be working on at the moment?
I just got to say before I answer this is awesome. Listen to my colleagues. This is one of the reasons you're paying money to go to school. There's just so much to take in, which takes me to my advice here: be a sponge. Go get involved. Go try out some of these things you see posted everywhere. Adrian and company, and Trey, and Jeremy, and so many others do a great job putting all these posters up with things going on. Go try some of these things out. Be a sponge. I can't agree with Dr. Chapman more. Go talk to your professors. Get to know them. That's part of it. Talk to introduce yourself to your classmates. I've seen people from opposite ends of the state become friends for life, and they'll tell you we stay very connected to our alums in music. We have to because we have to go recruit music majors, and they're best of buddies, and they never, in some cases, knew the name of the high school where the person came from. And they made that leap forward to get to know those people, and now they have friends for life. There's people involved with things here that they never thought they'd be involved with before. I never thought they'd be involved with them. I knew them in high school, trying to recruit them, and they're like in Sci-Fi Fantasy Guild, and I thought they'd never be in that or something else, and I just think that's so cool. So be a sponge. Go take in as much as you can. You're paying for it.
I really don't have anything different to add. I told you that going to office hours led to a job for me. Go to sporting events. I went to sporting events and plays on campus, and met some people that I've been friends with for 40 years. Yes, I've been out of school for 40 years. Okay. So, but we met here at Glenville, and we still get together and still see each other, and it's because we met here and we formed those connections that Dr. Bone talked about. So it's really important. Don't sit in your dorm room all the time and binge watch. Just get out there. And you never know what's going to happen.
Then you can binge watch.
Binge watching groups. Yeah. All right, so thank you so much for all that. That was great. Who's got a question? Anybody want to pose a question to the panel? Yes.
Is there anything that is offered to us students now or to future students that you wish you had?
Oh yeah.
So we'll start. I'm just going to repeat it for the microphone. Is there anything that we offer at Glenville now that you wish you had had in college? And we'll start with Dr. Bone.
Yeah, the Academic Success Center, hands down. There was nothing organized like that when I started my undergrad. I could have used it. I was terrible at math. Just so terrible at math, and I tutored with some of my friends and stuff, but there was no organized unit like that to help you find a tutor and things like that. You had to go look for one and beg, and it wasn't easy. So ASC, hands down.
Anyone else like to add to that?
Yeah, the Alumni Hardship Fund, the alumni, the Glenville State University alumni, we have $20,000 in our hardship fund now, and students rarely apply for it. And the only conditions are that something has changed in your life. A parent has lost their job, you have lost your job, something, somebody's ill in your family, and, don't want that to happen to anybody, but if those conditions do happen, go to our alumni office and apply for the hardship fund. We rarely turn anybody down because we know how hard it is. So our alumni wants to help you and continue that fund for years and years. So that's awesome.
Excellent resource. And if you're interested in that, you can go see financial aid for the application for the hardship fund.
It's Connor Ferguson, our alumni director, so I guess maybe Dave Hutchison
so
now.
go see
Foundation.
Dave Hutchison over in the administration building if you're interested in applying for the hardship fund. So, Dr. Chapman.
Honestly, it's Glenville's commitment to keeping class sizes small that I really wish I had had the benefit of. I mean, I didn't go to a gigantic school, but I definitely did my first couple of years of college find myself in those rooms with 128 other students. So even when I did try to talk to my professor after class, like, she didn't know who I was, and I'd get all fired up about, something about biology and want to talk, and she'd be, rushing out, and I was just kind of a number to her, So the fact that you are going to consistently be in small classes at this college is so special and important.
I love how much the Academic Success Center has grown, because I believe when I started, it was not quite that yet. It was in the process of something else, or it was something else, and it became what it is now. So I think it's cool to see that it has its own area, kind of like a place to almost hang out, I guess. It was a really nice spot. That's a spot where you could talk with each other. So I think that's the coolest thing, is just seeing the growth of that entire program and all the treatment that it gets. Not a whole lot's changed in 7 years. Not a whole lot, but that's most noticeable. It's just getting better, is what I can see. So take advantage of it.
All right. That was a great question. Thank you. Any other questions out there for our panelists? No?
I would say, does anybody have, I'm kind of going, I'm too far into this, so I'll try not to. I think the state does a great job now compared to previously. And maybe Garret, you were benefited from CFWB and college application weeks, and I think our admissions office here does a great job of really, if you want to go to Glenville, the option is there, it's available too. So it's easier, I think, to access college applications and go through the admissions process. One thing I kind of ring true that's common through all of you is your intrinsic motivation. Like, you found an intrinsic motivation, you kind of had a big picture, you kind of had a direction. Now that we are making it so easy, I think we're starting to see a lot of students who, number one, maybe are doing it because it is the thing to do, and they maybe lack that intrinsic motivation. And then number two, maybe they're falling into the gaps of our state, the socioeconomic status of our state, where they're not supported at home, they're not being motivated to do these things at home. So I guess maybe a little bit of your thoughts on how we can help them see that, or how the students themselves can maybe work through that process themselves. Does that make sense? Trying to get to that.
Whoever wants to jump in, take that.
Well, I think this is, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but this is once again where conversations with your professors can be really helpful. If you start and you don't have like a big picture, you don't know exactly what you're working for, you just know that you wanted to go to college, but it can sometimes feel like, why am I getting up for this 8 a.m. class if I don't have a specific goal in mind? Right, like talking to your professors is how you get a better idea of what kind of options are out there. It's really hard to have something as a goal if you've never had that modeled to you. So knowing sort of what other people's lives have looked like might spark something for you, like, oh, I want something like that. And especially, I'm from a very small place in rural Alabama. If you're from a very small, rural, isolated place, it can be hard to see a variety of different ways to live your life. So talking with your professors, many of whom are, from outside of West Virginia and have had very different lives than some of you guys, can help you to find the thing that's going to motivate you.
And to quote Dr. Chapman's broken record, I'm going to sound like one a little bit, but going back to the Be the Sponge thing, some strategic gen ed, asking students if there's some things that they seem to have some interest in, and then gearing their gen eds those first few semesters to give them a wide range sampling of what's out there, what's available. I've seen that be effective with some students that weren't sure what they wanted to do coming in. Even on the music side, they thought, well, I think I want to do that, but they weren't quite sure. And so I've asked them over the years, what some other things, get them in some of those gen eds. And most of the time they stuck with music, but not always. Doing that got them to say, oh no, I think I could do well in this. So I would say trying a bunch of gen eds, seeing what's out there, getting involved in a bunch of things, and that can sometimes help them find where they think they may need to land.
And if you have a major and, you declare a major and you're unsure of that, you're just not sure that's what you want to do, or absolutely you want to do something else. I changed my major after 2 years, and I'm glad I did, because I don't think I could have taught history the rest of my life. I'm glad that they can do it, but it just it interests me, but not in a passionate way. So again, have those conversations with your friends, with your professors, and change your major if it's not what your passion is, if it's not what you love.
And maybe don't listen to the people who tell you you can't major in that. That's not going to take you anywhere. Like, all right, look, this is going to sound self-interested because I'm an English professor. But people are out there like on TV making jokes about how all humanities majors are Starbucks baristas. Which, by the way, don't knock Starbucks baristas. That is a hard job.
Yes.
But like, there are a lot of things that you can do with any degree that you get. Like, don't rule out something that you have a genuine interest in just because somebody told you that there's no career there. There probably is. Talk to the professors that are in that field and ask them what kind of jobs you can do with a major in history or whatever it may be that you've been told is a dead end. Like, don't listen to the haters.
To piggyback on Dr. Chapman here, this may not be a popular thing to say, but I've got to say it. College isn't for everyone, or the time of it's maybe not right. I had an administrator here get really frustrated with me one time for telling someone that, and I'm not always right. I've been wrong plenty of times, but this one I called right. This person, I'll tell you this day, is some of the best advice he was given. I was just like, based on what you've told me, maybe you should look at this, this, and this. I don't think this college thing is maybe the thing for you right now, and that's okay. We need people doing other things. I need electricians. I try to do that work, I'm going to blow something up. We need people doing other things. There's some great fields out there that have nothing to do with college, and that's perfectly fine. I think we've created this environment that unfairly sets people up for failure, and that you have to go to college. No, you don't. Who made that rule? So
that's a good point. Yeah, because it's one of those unpopular opinions. Like, well, why go to college? Why would you? That's a good question. Now, if it means something to you, then absolutely you should. Obviously, if you're here for more than a year, then you probably still want to be here after a year. We see people leave after 2 weeks because they didn't go to the first week of class or so. They probably didn't want to be here. Or maybe they did, they just messed up. It happens. But kind of finding what it means to you. Maybe even asking like a real question of, why am I doing this? That's a hard question to ask yourself sometimes. Like, why am I doing this thing? Why am I even in college? And then you tell yourself the answer is why. Because I want to do this. Because I want to do this. And hopefully all of those reasons you say are for you, mostly, or for your happiness. You shouldn't be doing stuff because you have expectations from family or something. Now, that's a real pressure. It very well is a real pressure. It's hard to get rid of that pressure. But you should do what you want to do. And you'll be most successful then. You want to look into it. You want to be the best that you hopefully can at that kind of thing. So asking yourself those kinds of questions. And hopefully that gives it a little more purpose. If you still don't know what you want to do or why you're doing it, but you're happy, keep doing it. Don't question it. You're happy, good. But other than that, yeah, finding that reason or that purpose, rolling with it. You can go anywhere.
I'd like to kind of piggyback off that just a little bit, with a follow-up. A lot of our students, especially first-gen students, especially with the lack of familiar support that we mentioned earlier, at the very slightest sense of failure will, and give up very quickly, very easily. Can one of you maybe identify a time in your life when you felt that failure and were able to persist which is what we now call an industry buzzword, academic grit. You know, an example of building that academic grit on a personal level.
I'll start because I've been picking on it. Math. I've got to give math credit for this. It gave me some grit, to quote Mr. Carter, that even music didn't. I wasn't good at it. I had to work really hard at it. It's the first time I'd gone into a class at midterm and was failing. And boy, that was tough for me to take. So I found a tutor. I started studying at the top of the library. I found a little corner to go get away from my music major friends, because most of us studied down in the music lounge. I got out of that building and away from them, and top of the library, and huddled up with my books and wound up passing the class. And it was a lot of hard work to do that. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that. So math taught me a lot. It taught me you have to get out of your comfort zone. I was not comfortable at the top of the library. It was all these people I didn't know, an environment that was different. The music building was comfortable to me. That little study area over my dorms was comfortable to me because it was people that I lived with up and down the hall. I got to know them pretty well. But I was given that advice by a professor. They were just like, go find you a good, different place where you can really focus and study, and no distractions, and you can really put all you got into math, and it worked. It was great advice. But yeah, it'd be math. That taught me some grit.
I'm reminded of econ, my freshman year. It was a class that was offered on Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8 a.m. Ooh, I should never take a class at 8 a.m. because I didn't go. I failed the class. I did. And I didn't understand it. I'm not great at math either. So the professor wasn't great like our professors are, He just assumed you should get it. And I didn't. And I gave up. I just didn't go. And I failed the class, but that wasn't good enough for me. I took the class over the next semester, and at the same time, because that's the only time it was offered. But I did go to class, and I did work hard. Like Dr. Bone said, you just have to stick to it. And, I wasn't going to let that get the best of me.
Yes.
So,
Well, I mentioned before getting a D on a paper in college, and that's not quite the same. But my entire identity, my entire sense of self was built around being a really good student and always getting A's on papers. And I got that D. It was my first upper level English class. And I just had this moment where I was like, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was, and I shouldn't be here. But I just decided I'll go one more semester and see how it goes. And then I realized I was not the problem. And I decided I was going to get an A on every paper I wrote from then on out to spite that man who gave me that D. And that sense of rage was great fuel. So I don't know if it was grit so much of it as it was hatefulness, but it was powerful.
Very good.
It's kind of the opposite for me, because I was never, where I always pursued a lot of music, I was never like, oh, I got a bad grade. I'm just like, yeah, I got a bad grade. That's normal. This is normal for me. But I never did bad in music. I did bad in music. That was abnormal for me. That's weird. That doesn't happen. So in my first year of grad school, that's whenever we had quarantine, all this stuff. I was getting to that point of, why am I doing this? It's like, I knew I could probably be successful, so I wondered, why am I still here working on a master? So I ended that semester, it was a little rocky. That next year, I had to do pretty good that semester, or else I wasn't going to be able to stay. And I had to take more hours, just because of I was also a teaching assistant. So I taught the class, did other stuff there as well. But we had to take more hours. And I already had a good bit of hours on my schedule, and almost half of them didn't even have any weight toward my grade. So I'm in this weird spot of, I don't really know if I want to continue. I don't have much drive. So what do? I take Japanese because it's something I was semi-interested in, but never really looked into on my own. But it was something that just gave me new spark, new joy in life. I was studying 3 hours a day on just Japanese, not even my music stuff. I actually cared about being a good student for once, quote unquote, for once. I actually enjoyed answering things right in that class. I always enjoyed getting really good grades, and it gave me a new drive to just be a better student all around, actually. So I actually tried something new that I thought I would never even have time for, and yeah, it just tied everything together. I took it again the next semester, and I still study, so.
Interesting. Good. All right, anybody else have any questions for our panelists? Yes. Okay.
I don't really have a question. It's more of like a sense of relatability to Amanda Chapman here, is that I got a C on a rough draft, and yeah, I was pretty mad about that and stuff, and so my grade, I build myself on being a good student and like getting straight A's and stuff, and that was my only B for the semester, and I got so mad, I tore myself apart about it. I'm like, man, I really couldn't have done that.
It wasn't her class, right?
No.
So,
But see, you just need to convert that into rage. It fuels you.
you mentioned the whole thing about like an academic appeal. Do you think, even though the semester has passed, that I can still argue that?
I don't know what the time limit is.
So a single grade issue, no matter whether it's a final grade or an assignment grade, must be appealed within 7 business days of the grade issue. So that would be on the statute of limitations, but now you know for the future if that ever happens again. And in academic success, we do handle those, so I'm not sorry to get off on a tangent, but if you are interested in grade appeal, or we like to say in college, you can appeal anything. So our registrar, Ann Reed, says that all the time. If a student has an issue with something that happened in the class, she always says, well, you can appeal anything. There's actually a form called an academic petition that is almost entirely blank, save for a signature line for you and your advisor. So basically it says that this is my problem, blank, I talked it over with my advisor, and this is the action I want to take. So, but yeah, anything that happens officially must be appealed within 7 business days of the issuance of the grade. That said, if you're ever interested or need help with any of that, come to the ASC, we can help you. Your advisor can also help you, but that's what we do. So, one of the things. Any other follow-up questions for our panelists?
I was just going to add really quickly, because that sounds kind of like mean. Like you only have 7 days to appeal, and what if you didn't know about it? But y'all should know that also applies to us as faculty members. Like if I'm going to report that a student has broken our academic integrity code by cheating or plagiarizing, I have to do that within 5 business days of that assignment being submitted, right? So it goes both ways, right? You've got to be on time with these things.
Yeah, I tell students a lot that sometimes with these things that y'all have to do as students that seem like they may be pointless rules and regulations, a lot of them are actually great preparation for the real world. When I moved to Cincinnati for grad school, we had put our trash can out the wrong way. And so I go out to check the mail after class one day and at our apartment, and there's this citation from the city of Cincinnati. I'm like, what is this about? And I'm looking at it. If you want to, try to defend yourself against this, you can show up. So I showed up and I went to the city court and got there in front of the judge, and I can't remember exactly what I said. It was basically, well, we weren't aware of it. Gavel hits, quote, and I'll never forget this quote: "Ignorance of the law is not defense of the law. Pay your fine." And so there it was, and so So.
Which applies to academic integrity codes as well.
And there's a student code of conduct, student handbook, and it's just like us on the faculty side. There's a faculty handbook as well, and we're all bound to that. Most of the time, it doesn't cause you trouble with students, but sometimes it can, and it's there. So.
And honestly, you want to be armed, go read those things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not scintillating reading, but you'll know, right, that when you get that C and you don't think it was right, there's something you can do about it.
And I would say the same about the college catalog that you fall under. Make sure it says in your degree what catalog you're in. That is your agreement, your official agreement between you and Glenville State that is binding. So if your degree plan says one thing and someone else says, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's not how we're doing things anymore," it's like, well, this is the agreement we made. You and I. This is our contract. So be sure to pay attention to those things as well. And those academic integrity policies are in the college catalog. So, we also give a PowerPoint on GSU 100 on academic dishonesty. Any other follow-up questions for our panelists? Yes.
What led you guys to figuring out what degree you wanted to go into?
Good question.
So I guess for me, I came here history, but I took a PE class and a health class, and it was taught by Coach Lilly, and just the welcoming and the compassion that he had for his students, and I could tell he loved what he did. And I thought, I'm going to take some more of these classes. And then Coach Carney and Miss Piercy, they were very passionate about what they taught, and they were just good people. They were so happy to see you in class and help you and work with you. And so I just knew I wanted to be with them, and I wanted to do what they did. So.
Pretty much the same as my band directors in school. I just loved them and loved what they did and how they took good care of people. Did it through music, and it changed my life, obviously, and I wanted to do the same. I mean, I wish there was something more in depth, but there it is. I wish I could tell you, I went to Cambodia. It was on this mountaintop, and this asteroid fell.
You could have told us that. We wouldn't have known.
It's true. That's why I'm not an English professor.
I always knew that I wanted to teach. I was just inclined toward it, and I think I could have been happy teaching just about anything, but I didn't want to take education classes, so I wanted to do my area of specialty and then go on and get certified. I thought I was going to be a high school teacher. Turns out I didn't do that, but English is what I chose specifically because books were so important to me. I grew up in a very conservative family that was well-intentioned but tried to shelter me from a lot of the world, and books were my sort of secret rabbit hole out into the world, so that I could find out what other people's lives were like, and it just opened up new possibilities for me, and I wanted to be able to share that with my students.
I think for me, a lot of it, what Dr. Bone was kind of saying, just having great professors, great teachers, having that great model and thinking, well, they have the coolest job ever. They get to go home and then they get to come back and play music. That's the coolest thing. I want that too. But also I knew I didn't want to teach like in a high school or middle school kind of system. I like teaching in general, but I knew I didn't want to do that. So my bachelor's and master's are in music performance. So that's kind of an interesting degree because you could perform music without a degree. Absolutely. That said, though, it's just I knew it would be a fun pathway for me. I was self-motivated in high school. That's what I did. I wouldn't go to school. I would stay home and practice. So I knew I'd be good for performance because I would practice all the time. So it worked out for me. A lot of things just fell in line for me with, going here. But just knowing that I wanted to play music and performance was something I was already motivated for. It just helped.
Great answers. As a fellow musician and also a advanced musical degrees. Again, and what Dr. Chapman said, don't let people naysay about the degree you want. Obviously, I have a master's degree and I'm working on my doctorate in music, and I'm adjuncting for the college, but I'm primarily working somewhere else. So just because your degree is in something that may not be to some equitable or economically sound, do what you love. That's what's most important.
And I have to piggyback on that because my wife just said that this weekend. She actually wanted to be an English teacher and still does. And she loved English growing up. And she was forced into another major. It's a long story, but do what makes you happy. Life's short. And she was just saying the other day, she's like, I can't remember what started it, but she's like, I couldn't have done English as a major, right? And because that's what she kept being told. And there's been so many times in her adult life that she's found out she could have done English thousands of times over. So she's an example of someone that didn't do what made them happy and regrets it. So do what makes you happy.
Yeah, you want to major in studio art, do it. You'll find your way.
Yeah.
Because again, at a place like Glenville, you get a lot of faculty experience with your faculty, you get a lot of connections, a lot of networking through the Alumni Association, and it's a small little community with Hidden Promise. We have a very wide network now of Hidden Promise scholars that have gone on to graduate. If you're interested in who they are, there's a big book outside of my office. There's a little plug third floor of the library of all the Hidden Promise graduates since the beginning of the program in 2007. So.
We have a music grad that he was just I was like, what do you want to do? What do you really want to do? I'd like to do music and grow plants. There's not really a major for that. And I was like, well, do it. Well, how do you do it? Well, you got to pick one or the other. So got his music degree first, and then went and got state horticultural training on the side. Took a while, did a bunch of stuff online, and now he does a greenhouse by day and does music on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, does the light and sound tech for a little stage at a restaurant over in the eastern panhandle area of the state, and is loving life. And that's pretty cool. And that's y'all.
Man, I thought for sure you were going to say he's one of those people playing music to plants. They say it works.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He probably does.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for our panelists? All right, well, I'd love to thank all of our panelists here today. You've done an excellent job. I've really learned a lot. I think we all have. Can we have a round of applause? That's it. There's more refreshments in the pre-function area, more t-shirts. Take a couple. They don't belong to the college. They came from CFWB and they're completely free. So have at it. Have a great rest of your evening. And thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.